I'll call this meeting of the Johnson City City Commission to order for this Thursday, March the 3rd. We're meeting at 6 p.m. in the City Commission chambers of the Municipal and Safety Building. And to begin our meeting, I will invite Pastor Aaron Wymer from Grandview Christian Church to come and bring our invocation. If you'll please stand.
God, as we gather to handle what can feel like mundane details of city planning and managing, we are reminded that war-torn places such as Ukraine and others around the world would consider mundane details of planning and managing a great luxury. Thank you for the luxury of gathering in peace tonight. We pray for peace in the places that are in turmoil tonight. We pray for safety for innocent civilians. We pray for justice for those with the power to stop the war, but who refuse to do so. We pray for those who are welcoming refugees, that they may be blessed by their hospitality and that they may have the resources necessary. We pray for those who lead this meeting tonight, that their agenda will be for the flourishing of the people of Johnson City. All glory and praise belong to you. I pray in the name of Jesus and ask your blessing on this meeting and through this meeting. Amen.
Amen. If you'll face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commission, your first order of business is approval of the minutes for the regularly scheduled meeting on Thursday, February 17th.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
And Mayor, staff would request that items 10.1, 11.1, 11.2, and 11.3 be moved up at this point.
If-
Our Vice Mayor needs to leave at 6:45.
If there's not objection, we'll reorder the agenda accordingly. There's not objection, so we'll,
And item number 10.1 is the third reading of an ordinance to revise Title I, Chapter 1 of the Code of Ordinance of the Johnson City, Tennessee, to adopt a new seal and emblem. As Keisha makes her way up, for this final reading, I would love to announce that I have asked Keisha to step in as a Director of Public Affairs for the city, so she'll be taking on additional responsibilities and working with me as it relates to state, local, and federal legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ball. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to take on the challenge. For your consideration one final time, we have a revised city seal. And I want to be sure, I have not done this the past few times, to recognize that this was designed by our very own JT McSpadden. We are incredibly lucky to have such an immense talent on staff in-house. And so I want to say thank you for your work.
I move for approval.
we have a motion and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
All right.
You clearly wanted this.
I want that gone. So,
5 years
so
old.
that'll
When
be
does that go on
available
eBay?
eBay tomorrow for those, yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Commission, your next order of business is the consideration of the approval of initial bond resolution. And if you allow me, both Janet and I are going to go down to the lectern and be able to present this to you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to present this. The bond issuance recommendation from staff. We understand and feel like it's very important to take time to talk about any time that the city borrows money and the responsibility that comes from doing that. We have worked through and fully vetted a lot of these projects, but we feel like we want the public to know that we take this very seriously, and we believe that anytime that we go into a large effort in borrowing money, we should take the time to explain what we're going to use it for and be transparent in doing that. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that. Janet Jennings is our finance director, of course, and she'll be here to explain the financial part of it. But I kind of wanted to walk through a little bit of history as well as talk about the projects that we would propose to be funded. So this is for just folks who are watching. Some folks may say, why do we issue bonds? We issue bonds when we have capital projects where there are intergenerational equity so that they're paid for over a period of 20 years in our case. And they benefit, and we'll talk a little bit more, as what we call PAYGO, which is cash funding. It allows for better management of property tax rate increases, or to better manage them and hopefully be able to decrease them. It allows preservation of reserves, for use during economic downturns. The other opportunity in the way we pay for things is a cash funding model, and that's not what we're recommending this for, but we wanted to explain it. That's for maintenance and everyday operations, smaller projects, projects with a short useful life, and debt capacity or debt service capacity not available to fund critical capital projects. So that's just for a purpose of being able to explain the why behind why we're doing this. Looking at the history of debt funded projects for the past, since 2008, we wanted to just demonstrate that this is a practice that has been done, and it's a practice that's recommended for local governments in order to be able to fund large projects. Some of the examples of things that have been funded through the years, in 2008, there were energy improvements and public works projects, and we're just highlighting some of these. In 2010, Science Hill Football Stadium, Freedom Hall, MPCC construction. In 2016, there was a large issuance of debt for Freedom Hall, the VA Access Road, Indian Ridge, and Langston renovations. So, and in 2020, there was issuance of debt for the projects that you can see, which was the beginning of the West Walnut Street project. So the proposed capital projects that we're recommending as part of this bond issuance include, under the general fund, completing the West Walnut corridor, entering into the project for Wing Deer Park. I want to point out that when we had our last work session, there was a request to look at being able to put in turf fields for the two larger soccer complexes. So we have added that amount in. It added an additional $1.2 million to the cost, but that is included in the cost of the Wing Deer Park. The Oakland Mountain View improvements, those are roadway improvements to, I think those were discussed when projects were approved, apartment complexes, housing along that roadway. There was a commitment from the commission to move forward on those projects. And then the last one is the State of Franklin Knob Creek intersection improvements, and that is also in the same vicinity. So this is in the amount of $43,400,000. I also wanted to point out that there's other parts of this bond issuance. The water and sewer projects, these are all projects that you have seen before, and I'm happy to answer any questions or have Tom answer any questions about these. You will see that there's debt for the water line and sewer line portion of the West Walnut Street. They total $25 million. We've also added, as a result of our conversations, the ability to be able to borrow money to add a turf field at Indian Trail, the Science Hill track turf, and then some additional cost associated with finishing out some of the schools as part of this. That total comes up to $2.1 million and will be paid through PEP funds. And the last one is the stormwater portion, which is paid through revenues for West Walnut Street. That's for $3 million. And then there is a cost of issuing debt, and the reason that we do all of these together is you pretty much pay almost the same amount regardless of how much you borrow. So the total amount of issuance is 74,125,000. Just as a reminder, only the 43,400 is the portion that would be paid from the general fund. I wanted to talk, and as we talked to you about delivering on some of these projects, I wanted to relate them back to the commission's strategic plan. And in this case, with the debt that we are recommending be issued, it does touch on the 4 aspects of the commission's strategic plan. Economic vitality, the West Walnut corridor provides for that. The quality of place, I think the West Walnut and the Winged Deer, as well as resurfacing and putting down turf. Check those boxes. Future-ready infrastructure, the infrastructure we talked about on Oakland, Westview, and Boones Creek, or Knob Creek, and state of Franklin are examples of that. And in excellence in city government, the fact that we're issuing bonds that are paid over a 20-year period to finance this infrastructure that will be in place well beyond that is an example of excellence in city government. So I'm going to turn it over to Janet to talk about the impact on our debt service model. And again, this is just for the general fund.
So, your financial person always has to give you all sides of the story. And as we're building these wonderful projects and putting these investments into our community, we also have to look at this from the standpoint of what do the credit rating agencies look at, and what should we be looking at, and what do I look at? And Kathy, so we look at the $35 million level, which you may recall that's what we had in our 2022 budget as new debt service for the general fund. Our 10% debt service policy says that when we take all of our general fund expenditures, we're not going to spend more than 1/10 of it each year for debt service, so that we have 90% left for roads, police, fire, schools, and all those other large things that we provide to the citizens. So looking at the $35 million level, you can see on that second line that says current outstanding, that's what we are already committed to. Those are bonds that we've issued in the past, and we're committed to those payments over the rest of the life of the bonds. So if we lay in the new debt, which is highlighted there in peach or pink, you can see the annual debt service is of $2,353,000 for each of those years. And I've only given singular years through 2027, so that you can see that when we lay in this debt service percentage, that we're still in fairly good shape in 2022 and 2023. We slightly exceed the 10% policy. I do want to mention that in looking at this, I did assume a 1.9% growth, which is what we've been experiencing over the last 10 years. We're always going to have ebbs and flows. We're always going to have these situations where we have a year where, the economy's down, we rebound. So the 10-year period really gives a better picture than a shorter term picture, because that allows for a few ebbs and flows. So with the 1.9% growth, this is where we land. Not too bad. So we go to $40 million just as a comparison. And you can see that when we hit 2023, that's where we really take the biggest hit to the debt service policy. So we're at 11.1%. And then we get back in fairly good range. And then in 2026, 2025 probably really is when we would be able to issue additional debt. So the list that you just saw was in the $43.5 million range. So we want to provide you the figures on where would we be if we issue the full $43.5 million. So you can see here that in 2023, we're at 11.3% on our 10% policy. We're still, close to 11%, but, not too bad. And then 2025, it gets much better. And then again, we could issue debt probably in 2026, early 2026. So I just want to provide you some comparisons as you make decisions.
Thank you. So I think you all have seen this information before. We provided this to you in the work session. But at this point, our recommendation is to move forward with the implementation or the issuance of the bond from the general fund. And I'm happy to go back to that slide if I need to, for 43.5. And then also to do the water sewer bonds, the stormwater bonds, and the PEP bonds for a total of $74 million. Any questions?
Janet, just a few thoughts on our credit rating. What impact do you think that might have?
We're at a AA2. We actually have 3 AA ratings, which is phenomenal. The credit rating agency has made some comments about our credit rating. I can't tell you for certainty what $43.5 million will do, but we've not issued in a year or two. So, I don't have grave concerns about that. But they'll certainly take a look at that. And they'll look at our CIP. They look at a lot of things as they consider our rating. Socioeconomic issues are probably our biggest area where, we kind of have some struggles. But we are fiscally sound. We have good management, and we've added to our fund balance in a healthy manner. So those will all be taken into consideration.
And just to clarify, when you're talking about the bond rating and socioeconomic indicators, the bond rating agencies are looking at more than just the financial house at City Hall. They're looking, would you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, they look at the health of the state, and the state has AAA, so that certainly helps us. They look at the socioeconomic factors like per capita earnings and things like that. We have somewhat of control over that, but not a lot. Certainly the things we're doing, investing in the community and helping people have better paying jobs and things like that are going to help those, but it takes a while. A lot of those we do not have control over. And there are 3 or 4 areas that the credit rating agencies do look at, and that's one of them.
Are there other questions for staff?
I've got a handful.
Well,
That's
have
okay.
at it.
In reading the resolution, and it's just informational, I was just curious, it says the revenues from the water fee income will pay for that portion, but it will not secure it. Whereas with the school debt piece, it would be secured by the quarter-cent sales tax. Why is there a difference there?
Difference there is that we actually have a referendum that was passed in the late 90s that specifically dedicates the quarter-cent sales tax for the PEP debt.
Okay. But is there any issue with not securing the debt on the water?
It's actually better to have the general obligation, to have
Okay.
the general fund be the primary, then the water sewer is the pledge behind that. We call that double barrel bonds. We get a better rate if we do that because
Okay.
it better secures the funding, the debt service.
In the resolution, it mentions rates not to exceed 6%. What kind of rates are we looking at this current time?
Today, the high 2s.
Okay.
But, it's a day-by-day situation, so.
And it said specifically, because it's worded that you may break this up into portions, not just one big bond, but maybe multiple bonds. But that the rate of any bond would not exceed 6%. My question with that is, would it not serve us better that wording be that the weighted average rate not exceed 6%?
That deals with the bonds face. So typically, we will issue 4% and 5% bonds, and then we get a rather, not to get into the weeds, but we get a rather large premium. What that means is we're paying 4 to 5% to the investors, but we may get, $70 million in proceeds, but we're only going to have to pay back maybe $65 million. So it's the same as, in the banking world, you're dealing with discounts and premiums. We've been in a really good position to be able to issue debt at a premium. because the investors see us as an attractive investment.
And then I guess my last question is the process. I don't know if I caught that in the, I mean, we're looking at this tonight
Right.
and we're approving it, but this isn't the final step, right?
Correct. This is the initial bond resolution. Tomorrow morning, if you pass this tonight, we will send in an advertisement to allow the public to give a 20-day input. So they have 20 days to give public input. And assuming we don't receive any negative input or anything that would cause some problems, then after 20 days have transpired, whenever that next commission meeting would be, we would bring back the full bond resolution, which will be much longer than this. I also want to mention, we have an opportunity to do a refinancing and save a couple of $1 million on the 2013 bonds. So we will bring that with the full bond resolution. That gives some economies of scale when paying the fees and so forth.
And then, I guess, just to expand on the first slide about the intergenerational equity,
Yes.
I think what we're saying there versus cash funding is a lot of these projects are going to be used not by just the people who are in the city today, but people who will be here 20 and 30 years from now. And it wouldn't necessarily be fair for us to have the people today pay for things that will be used by citizens of the future. And so the bonding allows that to be equitable among all generations of taxpayers instead of hitting us hard on the front end. Is that
Exactly.
right?
Very well put, yeah.
You get to pay for it longer than I do.
And if we have a great quality of life, my children will help pay for that
There you
too.
Are there other questions?
I would say, in all fairness, this commission is charged to make a major decision. I think this is the most we've ever had to take out and be a loan at one time. But to attest to what Commissioner Hunter is expressing, we are making a major decision for not only today, but for tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And so we have to think beyond what we see in front of us and be futuristic. So just wanted to just echo that.
Mayor, I did have one more question, or two, maybe. When's the next time that property values are reassessed?
25.
25?
It's isn't it on the 5 years or the 4 years?
I'll have to get back to you on
That's
that. I
fine.
think we only had one a couple of years ago.
And I only bring that up as a thought of mine in that, what you projected on the revenue side is basically a straight line or somewhat straight line of revenue.
That's on the expenditure side.
Okay.
Debt service
Well,
is based on
but you
expenditures.
used a, 1.9?
Yes.
Increase year over year.
Per year, yes.
There may be larger increases in revenue in those coming
definitely.
years. And
Yeah.
and you're very good at having a very responsible and conservative approach to things, and that's the way we should look at things. But fact of the matter is, it could be better.
We're
Sale-
hoping it's going to be better.
Sales taxes are, we've been shocked by the strength of the sales tax given the pandemic. And, we're anxious to see what the current world economy is going to do and how that's going to impact us locally and consumer confidence. However, certainly the revenues could continue to surprise us.
Sure.
And give us opportunities to invest in the community.
And I'll just add to that, I think one of the big factors for me, and I'm going to support this recommendation, and I know you are very conservative, Janet, and you use the number of 1.7% growth, which I think we are poised to really grow more than that. And these projects are really addressing the future, and the infrastructure particularly, we have to be prepared and ready for that. Two of the ones were for Mountain View and Knob Creek Road, of which we're seeing a lot of growth over in that area right now, and we have to address the traffic issues. And I'm really glad to see that as part of this plan. But yeah, and then Wing Deer Park, which as we want to be known as a family-friendly city for sure. We are really building the environment here that supports our young people and adults, because we all go there and use those facilities. But they're going to be at a caliber now that we will see tournaments coming here in droves, when you can have that kind of population, playing there without having to travel 10, 20 miles to get to another field for another game. So anyway, I think they're good projects, commissioners. I know we've been working hard on identifying what those projects are, and I think we'll all be pleased to see them all completed here soon. How soon, Mrs. Ball?
Well, I would have to go back for each project, but of course, the timeline on the West Walnut Street. But I think that our goal is definitely within the next 3 to 4 years maximum. But this gives us the ability to move forward on all of them quickly, so.
Are there other questions? Is there?
Yeah, I have one question. Is there, and I may be overlooking this, is there contingency built in this ask?
Yes, Commissioner, there are contingencies in every project. So there's
Okay.
different amounts of contingencies based on the project and how much we know about each of them, but each of them have a contingency built in.
Do you feel good about that, those numbers within that?
I do. The thing that we agreed on is that within, especially the general fund amount, our goal is to complete all of these projects with the money. So we've put contingencies in. If one project goes over, there's the ability within those funds to be able to cover other things. So I feel like we have adequately put money in there to be able to complete the projects.
Thank you.
I would move for approval. We have a motion. Is there
Second.
and a second? We'll let Janet get back up here so she can write that down. We have a motion from the Vice Mayor and a second from Commissioner Brock. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commission, the next item to be considered is approval of a resolution for termination of the payment in lieu of tax arrangement between the Industrial Development Board of the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and Mullican Flooring LP. Alicia Summers is here.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Gerald Thomas. I'm the Chairman of the Industrial Development Board, and this is Alicia Summers. She is our Vice President over Economic Development with NetReps. I'm sure you all know her. Basically, this amounts to Mulligan came to us about 3 months ago and informed us that they were unable to meet their employment requirements.
Can you talk closer to the microphone? There we go.
They were going to be unable, they knew they were going to be unable to meet their employment requirements. I think they were at 200 employees, and they would need to be at 400 by this March 31st of 2022. And so they came to us and started preparing for this about 3 months ago. We've had about 2 or 3 meetings, and they basically want to buy the pilot out and buy the lease out, the entire project. They want to make the taxpayers whole. And I think it's a good thing, because they will stay a viable corporate citizen. They'll operate as usual. They're just not going to be won't be able to operate as large as they wanted to, but they'll still be here and still operating. And they will put a vacant building back on the tax rolls. So we're asking your all's approval to terminate their pilot program and the lease agreement.
Are there questions for Alicia or Mr. Thomas? I would move for approval. We have a motion to approve.
A second?
A motion and a second. Is there discussion? I guess I would just acknowledge Mullican and express appreciation for how they've handled it. The pilot commenced before a pandemic and before a whole lot of other things, and the reality of 2022 versus 2019, I think, what was the year that's 2017. It's a very different economy out there, and I think they've come to us with I think a constructive and productive approach. I'm glad they're still here. I'm glad they made a major investment in Johnson City, and I just want to express that to the leadership of Mullican. So we have a
Absolutely.
motion and a second. Is there any other comment, or we'll call the roll? If there's not objection, please.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
I'd like to add to Mayor's comments that there's two ways to make an agreement whole, and one is to fulfill the original commitment, and then the other is to pay back. And I think there's some confusion in the community that that's not what's happening, and in fact, it is. And that's a
Oh,
good
yes.
thing, that they're making good on a commitment that was made. And so I appreciate that as well.
Yes, they are definitely fulfilling, they're paying the grant money back, and they're also paying the tax money both to the county and the city back, reimbursing us. They're making the taxpayers whole, really.
Absolutely.
Thank
I could
you.
add one other note. If you all know of anyone that would like to work for a great corporate citizen, Mulligan is hiring in their second and third shifts. So
Thank you.
feel free to
Thank
reach
you.
out to Mulligan.
Thank you.
And Mr. Thomas, thanks to the IDB, I know y'all have been working on this for a while now, but thank you for the work y'all have done.
Well, I would, if, take a minute, I'd like to publicly thank Alicia Summers. I've been kind of under the weather for the last couple of years and still on the IDB, but she has stepped up to the plate and been before you several times. You notice I've been vacant, but I think I'll be here from now on. But thanks to Alicia Summers, we've been able to operate as usual. She's kept on top of everything.
Thank you. Thanks, Elisa.
Commissioners, our next order of business is to consider the Department of Economic and Community Development Letter of Agreement. This is a direct appropriation grant for governmental entities and project update for the Ash Street Courthouse renovation, and I'll turn it over to Randy Tribbett.
Is that Assistant City Manager, Randy Tribbett? Okay.
It depends on which hat I'm wearing at the time.
Colonel.
Colonel. All right. Let's set this over here. Well, thank you all for allowing me to present this to you. We're very excited about what you're considering tonight would be the agreement with the state of Tennessee for us to receive the $5 million appropriation from Governor Bill Lee's office. And so having this finally completed and presented to us is great news so that we can move forward. I wanted to give you an update on where we're at with the project a little bit so that you guys know what's going on and the direction. We've been working a little bit on this since we got the word that we were going to receive this grant. It's just been a little delayed in getting the agreement with the state so that we can make sure we've got funds to pay for it. A little bit on the project history. Governor Bill Lee appropriated $5 million in his 21-22 state budget for the renovations of the old Ash Street Courthouse. He did that at the request of the city and the county mayor, I think, to be an anchor for the Walnut Street corridor development. And so he saw the need and he saw an opportunity to be able to fund that, and he put that in his budget. The city issued an RFP for a design-build firm in August of 2021. After we received numerous applicants for that, we selected Burwell Construction and Clark Nexon Architects in September, entered into a contract with them that you all approved September the 14th, 2021. So in this period of time since September, the architects have been working on schematic design. They've been evaluating the building. We've had hazardous surveys completed there to see what would need to be abated. And so they've been performing evaluations on the building structural elements to make sure what all is going to have to be included in this remodel project. As of this last Friday, the state of Tennessee provided this letter of agreement, the direct appropriation grant for governmental entities. We got that to you as quickly as we could. If you have read over that, you see they really simplified it, which we're very thankful for that. The concern before, and I'll just touch on this a little bit before I go on, but the concern before was that we had until June the 30th of 2022 to complete the project. Here we are in March of 2022. But now the way they've done this, they've extended it. They're going to send us the money up front. We keep our records in a fashion in accordance with the state comptroller's office, and we can work on the project until the money's expended or exhausted. The only time we'd have to send the money back is if we did not spend it. And so that's not going to be a problem. We will spend the money. The contractor tells me that now getting started the way they are, we've got a permit issued to start doing the demolition and the hazardous abatement. We just received that. The subcontractor is going to start the end of this month doing that demolition. This is the outside from the Ash Street side. This building was built in 1910. It was the Postal Savings Bank, and it operated as the Postal Savings Bank until about 1937. And then it was reopened again as a courthouse for Washington County in 1940, and it did that for about 45 years till 1985. It was renovated again in 1987, and it housed the 911 emergency call center until about 2018, and then it was vacated. They moved into another location, and that's when most of the damage occurred, is from about 2018 till present time. The historical significance of this building, and I only show you this to kind of show you what the original building looked like, but the National Register of Historic Places puts this building's significance from 1910 to 1970. It was considered an important government building, in which that's what it was used for. People accessed it from Ash Street. And then there was additions done to it in 1927, 1940, 1964, 1965. And there's a reason I'm pointing those out to you, because of all those additions that were added to the building, and you all have driven by and saw those additions that have been put on there. This is one of the few buildings in town that has this architectural design. If you go on the VA campus, you see some other ones that have this type of architectural from the exterior. But in town, that's what makes this building so important on that Walnut Street corridor, is because based on that Beaux Arts, and I guess I'm saying Beaux correctly, East Tennessee, that Beaux Arts style is only,
If you say it fast enough and loud enough.
nobody
no one will
cares.
Nobody will know.
If I act like I know what I'm talking about.
That's right.
Okay. So existing condition of the building, I wanted to, and I know you've been through it, but I think for the public's benefit, and I wanted to show you some of existing pictures for the inside. Now, these pictures look pretty good, and that's the photographer, the angle of the pictures. But the picture on the left is the entrance lobby off of Ash Street, and you can see the architectural detail in like the crown molding and the window trim and all that. But you can also see that some of the walls are deteriorating, the floors and the base is deteriorating. On the right is the ornamental staircase that leads up, that was probably in the building in 1910. And it's in fairly good shape, but our desire is to restore that back with the marble treads, the ornamental railing and everything that's in there. Okay, now we get up on the second floor, and that's the corridor on the left of the second floor. And you can see the transoms above the wooden windows and the trim that's in there. It's got a lot of nice architectural detail, but you can also see from water damage coming through the roof that the floor is in very rough condition and buckling. So the floor is going to have to be all the way down probably to some joist or to the subfloor. To the right is one of the offices. And you know, when I got promoted to assistant city manager, I'm glad they didn't want to move me in that office. So that would have been kind of sad.
It's got a nice water feature.
Fix it up real quickly.
It's got a sink in the corner anyway. This is the courthouse that was used after 1940. I think Chancery Court was in there. They had the church pews that were in there when the court was going on. And then the second floor customer service area, I think they used to open up and take maybe taxes, or I don't know what they did there.
Marriage license.
Marriage license, that's exactly right. And that room's probably one of the worst conditioned rooms there, other than a bathroom that I'll show you in a minute. This is that same room where the marriage license was at. And you can see this is typical throughout the whole second floor of the walls and the floor conditions. That's the ladies' bathroom on the second floor on the left. And then I took a little bit of a close-up at the end of the corridor just to show that transom and those wood doors. We're going to try to salvage those. But also in that bathroom, you see that marble that's on the wall? We're going to try our best to keep that in and refurbish that marble that's on the wall in those restrooms, if we keep the restrooms in the same place. If we end up moving them to a different place, we're going to try to take that off and reuse it if possible. We've taken out some ceiling tile. There's been some level of demolition done just to check the structure. And you can see the structure there. The metal decking's not rusted or in bad shape. On the right-hand side, you can see that's where the 911 center was at. So that's an elevated floor. So all that'll be removed and back to the original floor.
That was a new part that was added on.
That was
though,
a
wasn't
new
it? Yeah.
addition. Yes, ma'am. And then I'll show you, this is one of the last pictures before I go into some schemes and some schematics. But this was the exterior addition in 1964, 1965. And I took this picture to show you that it doesn't blend. It doesn't match. It has no historic significance to the original 1910 building. It's a single story. You can stand in certain places on Walnut Street and see the rooftop HVAC units. And you see how close it comes out to Ernest Street. It comes all the way out to the sidewalk. So there's a reason I'm showing you this, because when we get into the schematics, I'm going to ask for something. There's always a catch. So here's some renderings of the proposed renovations. So this first one is, and what I really like about this, and we've tried diligently to work with this renovation to keep the history and the historic nature of the architecture alive, but also tied into the Walnut Street corridor improvements. So this, on the closest to you, that's Ernest Street. So you see there's a lot of landscaping beds, there's some trellises, there's some places to sit, there's gathering places. That will not be traffic for vehicles, it'll only be pedestrian and maybe possibly bicycle traffic. But the building, if you notice in this bird's eye view, that 1964, 1965 edition is no longer there. We've torn it down in this scheme and built a new lobby to include an elevator and a secondary staircase. So this makes the building ADA accessible, which we have to do. And then plus it ties back into the original 1910 design of this building and gives you access off of Ernest Street and off of Walnut Street.
So would the Ash Street entrance still be
It'll still be just like it is, only restored. This will be a back door basically,
Okay.
but designed specifically for ADA access. This is from Ernest Street looking straight into a glass lobby and into the building that would access the elevators. This is from the Walnut Street side, giving you a side view. And you can see the tower that kind of goes up to the same height of the original 1910 building with the glass and the brick. Now, the colors in this are still open to debate. Okay, this is a second scheme, and this leaves the 1960 building, but here's the issue with leaving that portion of that building is I showed you the roof was so low, so we're going to have to build some kind of a top screening point to hide the roof. We're also going to have to, because the floor elevation is different than the original courthouse's floor elevation, so we're going to have to install ramps, moving that around so that people can ADA accessible to both areas. And so it's going to take up a lot of floor space to do that. And then the cost of doing this puts the elevator inside of the existing building and the staircase in that tower that you're at. So you really kind of encroach upon the existing 1910 historic building by leaving that 1965 addition. And plus, it's not very attractive either.
What's the square footage of just that building, that piece of it?
I think it's like 2,000, but by what we talked, because we talked about that a little bit, and what we discussed about by the time you'd ramp it to get to a rentable space or to a tenant space, and by the time you did everything you needed to do on the outside to get in there, that you were going to end up being left with about 1,600 square feet. But see, you're going to lose, you have 1,600 there, but you're going to lose, maybe 1,000 square feet putting the elevator shaft inside the other part. And on Walnut Street, what they're proposing to do, is put some parking back here for access. Okay, this is the scheme 2, leaving the addition on there, showing the entranceway. Here's a different view looking at it from Ernest Street. And then here's a bird's eye view with their very first, they wanted to give us some options and look at it in a different way. And one of the things that, we know we're limited to the $5 million, but we want to get the most bang for our buck. So that's why when they started out, they added this canopy, and you can kind of see it's just a canopy that goes back into an open courtyard. The entire stairwell and elevators inside the existing building on this. So you lose a lot of square footage doing that with this canopy. And plus, I don't think the canopy is appropriate for the historic side of the building. That's kind of from the Walnut Street look of what the canopy would look like if it was open space. Now, so one of the things I wanted to say is, with all these schemes, I had the contractor give me a budgeted cost to do them, because I felt like the other one with the new lobby on the Ernest Street side with the stairwell tower and the elevator tower, that might push us a little bit over the budget, but it comes in under $5 million with a $500,000 contingency included in that.
So with respect to the Ernest Street side, the appeal of removing the 1965 addition to me is we're envisioning that being a front to this building. And so the scenario, I was at what you called scenario 1, where you were building the new and putting the elevator and all that in the addition and creating another front to the building. Because the idea of the West Walnut Street corridor was to connect downtown to the university, and that Ernest Street pathway connects Walnut Street to Ash to the Tweetsie Trail spur and into downtown. And so I think from a pedestrian and bicycle standpoint, that's probably a higher intensity use. I mean, I think more people are going to look at the building from that side than they are from Ash Street.
I agree.
My only question is, how the design of that addition seems very contemporary. I don't know, maybe I'm not using the right architectural language, but it seems a little bit like in stark contrast to the building, and maybe that's the intent.
I think the appropriate architectural term is wonky.
Wonky, okay, well,
It's a little wonky.
so wonky, I guess I'm just wondering if there's a chance to sort of harmonize that a little bit. And I don't know what that would look like, but not seem quite so much like we've slapped a new front on an old building.
Absolutely. One of the things, we've had that discussion, one of the things is we'll never, match the brick, so they're trying to use other materials that would be suitable to that time period without trying to, because if you try to match the brick, then it looks like that 1965 edition. So that's their comment. Now, this still has to go to the Johnson City Historic Commission, because this is in a historic zone. And they have to approve what your exterior materials looks like and how it ties in and attaches to the building. So
I'll withdraw my question and just leave it to them.
yeah, and they will do it.
I'm fine. So the item before us is the consideration of the actual letter of agreement. That's what you need us to take action on.
Exactly.
Are you also looking for feedback on this, or what can we?
We would welcome feedback, but our plan is to maybe engage the Walnut Street corridor group and get the band back together, maybe to have them come and look at it and give us comments. Not necessarily to select which way we go, but to get feedback from that community and the people who live around there and who are part of that Walnut Street development. So that's our desire, to have a meeting and show them this. We wanted you all to be the first to see this as the architects got it finished. And we would welcome any comments that you may have, but if you do approve this agreement, I'll probably send it to the state tomorrow. And there's a sentence in there that you may have read that said, once this is sent back, it says the state is prepared to process this agreement and issue payment in a timely fashion. So the sooner I get it back, the sooner we get our money. And the contractor informed me today during a progress meeting that we were going to be getting a payout here pretty soon. So they've been working for a while, and the architects have not sent us any bills.
I think y'all have done a great job on getting the agreement changed. It gives us a little bit more time, and I think as this project moves along, you know, it will, and there are other people who probably have some input on it, but I think what you're saying, Randy, is it's going to be restored to its historic content, inside and out. And, you know, whether the 65 edition stays on or off, I know it pretty soon because of the design. You'll have
That's
to know
correct.
that
They're
pretty soon.
wanting to
but-
move forward.
Yeah, but I think it looks
So
really good.
I would happily make a motion. It's a little out of order, but as the chair of the West Walnut Street Task Force, to approve the letter. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the letter? If not, can we call the roll?
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes. I want to just acknowledge that the vice mayor had to leave early for a work obligation, and so he offers his regrets, and that's partially why we reordered the agenda.
Thank you, and thank you for reordering the agenda, Commission. At this time, we will move back to item number 4, which is proclamations. The first proclamation is for recognizing Mary Archer. And Mary, I met with you earlier, and thank you. I think she must have stepped out. Thank you so much for being patient with us.
Oh, there she is.
She's coming back in now, so thank you so much.
Especially thank you for your patience. We don't normally.
She's
I'm
pretty
sure,
good.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So I want to congratulate you and offer a proclamation. And so I'll read it. Whereas Mary Archer has taught at Woodland Elementary since 2001, currently teaches 3rd grade, and has served on multiple school-wide committees. And whereas prior to teaching, Mary Archer served as the homeless education coordinator for the district from 1995 to 2000. And whereas Mary Archer collaborated with the Tennessee General Assembly in Nashville to pass the Doug Archer Act for the state of Tennessee concerning the location of AEDs within public spaces, including schools, to honor her late husband. And whereas as a teacher, she has worked to cultivate an inclusive classroom environment by building relationships, providing a safe space, and promoting healthy social and emotional outlets. And whereas every year Johnson City Schools honor Building Teachers of the Year, with the nominees then reviewed by a district-wide committee that includes former Teachers of the Year and administrators. And whereas Mary Archer has been chosen as the district-level Teacher of the Year for 2022-2023 for the Pre-K to 4 division winner, an honor recognizing her as a great role model for students and colleagues as she works to provide excellent education for Johnson City students. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Johnson City Board of Commissioners officially congratulate Mary Archer for achieving this great honor and extends appreciation for her service and the dedication to Johnson City students. Thank you very much, and we'll offer you the microphone if you care to say.
I really just want to say that I've served in Johnson City Schools for over 20 years, and then I did the homeless education, and I love Johnson City Schools. We have a great school system, and I'm still there. I should be putting my foot out the door, but I love the students and that I teach every day. That's what's so important to me.
And I
We're
want
gonna get
to-
your picture?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. Do it.
Yeah. Is that your,
So while we
is that your
get that
granddaughter?
to
She goes, this is how old I am. She goes to school with.
Why don't you bring her up? Why don't you
well,
bring
come
her up
on
and have
up.
her picture with you?
Come on up. So while you're coming for my mother was a kindergarten teacher for 30 years, and one time when I was a college student, I went and helped in her classroom for one day, and it was the most exhausted I have ever been in my entire life.
Well, I think she knows. She knows now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Mayor, our next proclamation is recognizing Lieutenant Brandon Jordan for being chosen as the VFW Firefighter of the Year, and Chief Bell is going to join him along with his wife.
Unless she
She has
chooses not
decided she's
to.
going to not join him.
She's taking pictures.
Oh, come on up.
Well, congratulations. We reordered the agenda just so we'd have an audience for all that other stuff. So let me read the resolution and proclamation to you. Whereas Johnson City Fire Department Lieutenant Brandon Jordan was recently selected as the Tennessee Veterans of Foreign Wars Firefighter of the Year, and whereas more than 100 VFW local and regional representatives gathered in Nashville for their midwinter conference and reviewed entries from VFW posts in 11 districts across the state, and whereas Lieutenant Jordan's entry was sponsored by the Johnson City John Sevier VFW Post 2108 and District 1 VFW Post, and whereas as a 17-year veteran of the Johnson City Fire Department, Lieutenant Jordan served as a firefighter and driver engineer before his promotion to lieutenant in March of 2020, whereas Lieutenant Jordan stands out as a clear example of what can happen when you establish a goal and persevere to its achievement, as evidenced by his academic accomplishments and contributions to the JCFD. And whereas in 2021, Lieutenant Jordan graduated from Union College in Barberville, Kentucky with 2 master's degrees, earned just 18 months after receiving his undergraduate degree in May of 2019. You're a glutton for punishment. Whereas Lieutenant Jordan kept a 4.0 GPA throughout his entire academic career while working full-time and making significant contributions to the JCFD, including developing a multi-year training approach that has been implemented to enhance in-service training and succession planning. And whereas the Johnson City Fire Department is fortunate to have members like Lieutenant Jordan, who will be the next generation of leaders and allow the JCFD to meet the needs of a growing community. Now, therefore, I, Joe Wise, the mayor of Johnson City, do officially congratulate Lieutenant Brandon Jordan for achieving this honor and for his outstanding leadership and service to the city. Thank you, sir. And then we'll squeeze everybody here. In the meantime, I'll give you the microphone if there's anything you'd care to say.
Sure. Thank you very much for the recognition from yourself as well as the commissioners. I'm very proud to represent the Johnson City Fire Department, and I accept this award on I accept this award in honor of all members of the Johnson City Fire Department for their contribution to the community, for their continuous service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Why don't we get everybody, do we need to squeeze together for the purposes of photography? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's true.
Commission, your next order of business is the consideration of a beer license application for Blue Corn Taco Cantina located at 2904 Bristol Highway, Johnson City, Tennessee.
Hello,
You'll give your name and address, please.
I'm Tony Ryder. I live actually in Kingsport. Our address is, I live in Kingsport. It's 4009 Skyline Avenue, but our business here is in Johnson City at 2904 Bristol Highway.
Thank you, sir. Have you read the rules and regulations concerning the sale of alcohol inside the city?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree to abide by them?
Yes, sir.
All right. Does the commission want to take action on the application?
Move approval.
We have a motion for approval
Second.
and a second. If there's not further discussion, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes. And we'll give you a chance to say anything you'd like about your business and what makes it unique that people should come and visit.
Well, our biggest thing here is just wanting to have authentic Mexican food. We moved out here, my wife's Hispanic, and when I moved here, everything here wasn't, Mexican restaurants weren't really authentic. And having real authentic Mexican dishes as far as having real street tacos and things like that. And that was something that I met some friends here in the local city, and my other business partner is born and raised here in Johnson City, and getting together and wanting to open a restaurant. And we tried opening up right away, and it was just during the height of the pandemic, put a big hurt on us, and it's hard. So we're trying our best to stay afloat and be here for Johnson City and be a small business in this environment.
We're glad you're here and we wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commission. We have two items. Both of them are road closure for special events. For the Goose Chase, one is the Shamrock Shuffle. The other one is Run for Wishes. I think Andy may choose to do them together, but I think you have to have separate votes for them.
Yeah, I can go ahead and just present them both together if you'd like. The courses are very similar. Actually, they're the same. So the Goose Chase is requesting intermittent temporary closures of Commerce Street, East King Street, Elm Street, East Fairview Avenue, Hill Street, East Myrtle Avenue, West Fairview Avenue, and Montgomery Street for their Shamrock Shuffle 5K on Saturday, March 19th from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. The Special Events Committee has reviewed this, and that includes traffic, police, and public works. We think the closures are safe and appropriate and would recommend approval. And then secondly, same streets that we're closing would be for Run for Wishes on Saturday, April 9th from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And again, Special Events Committee has reviewed and find them appropriate and recommend approval.
Are there questions for staff or for the applicant?
Well, Karen, that's nice of you to do the April 9th birthday. That's my birthday. So to done the race for me.
Today is my
Yeah.
birthday.
Oh, happy
I was waiting for a
birthday.
cake, but I have not
All
seen it
right.
yet.
Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Well, I would like to say that these two races are for great organizations. Shamrock Shuffle is for the Ron McDonald House, and Run for Your Wishes is for Make-A-Wish. So both of them have very similar causes and want to help kids dealing with terminal diseases and stuff. So we're honored to be involved.
Thank you. Thanks.
So we need a motion, I guess, first on item 6.1, the Shamrock Shuffle.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes. Now we need a motion on 6.2, Run for Wishes.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes. Congratulations, thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Commission, your next order of business is the consent agenda.
All right, I'm going to start with Commissioner Hunter. Do you have items that you wish to poll?
I have a couple.
They
Couple
are?
couples. 7.1.1, 7.1.4, 7.1.5, and 7.2.2.
All right. Commissioner Brock?
I had the same 7.1.1 and 7.1.4.
All right.
Same.
Sure you did.
No, I'm
No, I think
serious.
you're just saying.
See,
Okay, I believe you. Okay, so you don't have any more than are already pulled?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we want to take them in order then, Ms. Ball, for 7.1.1?
Yes, please. The first one that has been pulled is consider approval of change order number 1 for the Brush Creek aeration blower replacement. And I think, is Tom here too? Yes, hey, Tom. Thank you.
Would y'all like a quick overview and then maybe answer any questions you've got? Or do you want to just jump right into the questions?
I think you just want to jump into your question?
It's a pretty big change order, I guess. Go ahead, you're
Yeah.
first.
Well, no, you can go first.
And so I was just kind of curious when the project was first, bid and you defined the project, why the roof
Okay.
was not included at that time.
Well, it actually was included. I probably just need to give you a little bit of brief background on it. It's an existing building that we're renovating. It was originally built in 1972. The building houses the aeration equipment, which is the key process equipment at the Brush Creek wastewater treatment plant. So the project scope is to renovate the building, replace all the electrical, and replace 4 high-speed, or actually install 4 high-speed blowers, aeration equipment within the building. So the original drawings that dated to 72 that were provided to the engineer and architect had a metal deck, lightweight concrete, and a built-up roof on top of that, and that was for the entire area of the building. At some point in time, we had re-roofed that building. It was no longer lightweight concrete. It was a particle board or type of board that was built up. It had some form of membrane ballasted roof that was put on there. So, and the other thing that we've hit is as the contractor was blasting the steel deck, there's corrosion with the steel deck that all of the roof is built on. And so we're actually daylighting portions of that steel deck. So it's a change in scope of what was originally bid. The building was to be re-roofed, but not to the extent of the replacement of the steel deck, all of the material between the deck and the roof. So that's the reason for the change. Now, as far as the significance of the change, what y'all have been asked to do on the change order is a change order for 285, which is what's raising the project ceiling. You've got built in within the project that has not been utilized yet, or at least about 95% of it had been utilized, is a contingency of $143,000. So where the project will finish versus awarded, you awarded it at $4.9 million. We think that we're going to finish with the roof in it if there's no more significant changes, and I can't imagine that there would be, at just right over $5 million, which is going to be over about 2.9%. So for most of the projects we've got, we're finishing under. 2.9 is not way out of kilter, but it is a healthy change order for the roof replacement. The last thing I would mention is you certainly have a decision on it, and we're asking for approval, but I need to mention one other thing. The contractor ordered the roof materials as the original specs, and they will utilize that roofing material. But right now, we've got close to $4.2 million worth of equipment that's under that existing roof. So the 4 blowers are there and brand-new electrical switchgear. Last week, we're fighting water to keep it out of that new equipment. We want y'all to consider all aspects of it, but it's important that we keep the roof and keeping the current equipment dry. That's the responsibility of the contractor in his circle of responsibility. And therefore, that's why we're recommending that you go ahead with the re-roofing.
Are there other questions on that item?
No, I mean, obviously, water and electricity aren't
Don't mix.
good together. And yeah, my question, like Commissioner Brock's, was, because I wasn't there, how it wasn't found, and it sounds like it was something that you couldn't see until you started moving things.
You wouldn't expect to see that change if you were building a brand-new building, obviously, but change conditions.
Will the additional funds come out of contingency, or just, you've got other
portion.
projects that are coming in under budget and you'll use those funds?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're projecting by the time we finish to be right a little bit over $5 million, and y'all approved $4.9 million, so, okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thank y'all.
I think the Assistant City Manager Charlie Stahl's making his way up here for the next item, 7.1.4. Consider approval up to draft an ordinance for the sale of 2.0 acres of property to the town of Unicoi.
I can just ask questions
Okay,
if you want.
feel free.
So is that the brown metal building up above the soccer complex?
This is the maintenance building, which is, there is some metal there, but there's some brick and block to the
Okay.
right above it on the right side of the road.
Okay.
But below the old clubhouse for reference purposes, but I think you're identifying it properly.
And I guess my other question with that is, obviously, there's not a lot of activity on the city property out there, but is there an agreement that would be had with EMS if there was something that did happen, that there would be, or would they already be a first responder to that location if somebody got hurt on?
Well, I wasn't really involved in those details. It was expressed to me by the town of Unicoi that they're working with the Unicoi EMS to locate an additional station there to serve that area, and that was
Okay.
the interest. And of course, the town of Unicoi, which obviously incorporates that entire area, has an interest in seeing that area served, and they approached us in 2020, and there was a change in administration down there, and so I guess it was the proposal of interest to us was formalized at the end of 2021, and that's why it's here tonight.
Thank you.
I think that's a really good use for that property, and, you know, we've been vacant out there for a long time, so I'm glad to see it.
And they've already approved it, so it's just waiting on us and then an environmental study or something.
Yeah, I mean, this has been, this interest was expressed in 2020, their town. I was with them on the tour of the site, that they know what the property looks like. There's about, if you look at the appraisal, about 1.25 acres of the 2.01 is actually usable property. It's a little bit hillside, as you know, but the town did formally make this request, and of course, as it's indicated, if you authorize this to move forward, the city attorney would put this in ordinance form for your consideration.
Thank you.
So they've already approved this amount. This is their offer
Yes,
to
ma'am.
us.
Yes, ma'am. That's based on the appraisal that we arranged and provided to them.
I do have a question. This appraisal was made over 16 months ago,
Correct.
and considering that property value is increasing, do we feel that we're getting a fair value out of this property? I mean, it's good that we partner with neighboring cities, towns, but just throwing that question out there.
Well, that would be, I can't answer that with some authority other than to say, I think I would say this, if this was not going to be for public use, for public benefit, and sold to a municipality, I would probably recommend, if it was for a private interest, that another appraisal might be secured, but based on the proposed use. And again, this appraisal was October, November 2020, as you pointed out, so it is, their proposal came to us in December of 2021. So my only reason for delaying now to put it on the agenda was to obviously sit down and have an opportunity to brief the new city manager about the background on that, which, and more, I probably would have had that, the 1st of January on the agenda.
Thank you.
Further questions on that item?
Good to go.
All right.
Of this consent agenda, right?
I believe the next is
The next item is about just the putting in place an application for the fireworks, and Sunny's here to answer that question.
I'll provide you some brief background about how this came to be. Last month, we received it was communication and then permitting requests through the fire department, through the fire marshals, for Boyd Sports. There's going to be 3 fireworks show with some of the Doughboys games this year. Whenever we were looking at the statute, or the ordinance that we have in place regarding fireworks, we have language that was adopted in 1985 stating that the fireworks display, no fireworks display shall be given without a permit from the city recorder. When we inquired about what that permit looks like, we discovered that we didn't have one physically in place, that a lot of times this had taken place just through word of mouth.
and through oral agreements. So what we've done is just bridge that gap through the creation of this permitting process. The reason that it comes before you is because there is a fee attached to that. And so that policy and then the permit thereof has to be approved by the Board of Commissioners. So are there any questions with regard to the process, why we have it, why we're creating this, or
Are we
the
sure the
actual-
$10 fee is the right amount?
That is the lowest fee that we charge for any permitting.
Right, just for the benefit of those who aren't reading the packet, it's a $10 fee.
Yeah, that's, and Ms. Jennings can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that is the lowest fee that we charge for any permit.
And just as a point of clarification, that would apply to something happening at the park, TVA Park, or at Science Hill, but on the campus of ETSU, they would not need to get a permit from the city, correct?
That is state property. We would have to look at that just to confirm.
But generally, we do not have authority over state property. We get calls about this, so we need to be, and my understanding is they're not subject to our ordinances.
I cannot give you a clear answer on that at this time. It is my understanding there is some areas of jurisdiction that do cross over with regard to some licensing.
So we then probably do need to know, because they use pyrotechnics regularly at their games. Yeah.
We'll examine that whenever their scheduling is finalized with regard to, obviously, the football games. There are certain things that, whenever they take place just within the corporate jurisdiction for the city of Johnson City, that there are certain permits that have to be obtained from the city as well, regardless of what property they are occurring on, since they fall within the jurisdiction.
Okay, but we will look at that before it gets too far away from us.
Yes, and I will tell you, whenever we prepared this, the goal was to not be overly bureaucratic or create any excess work on the part of the applicant. Whenever they have a pyrotechnics show or include fireworks, they're required to have certain licensing by the state. And so our application requests production of those state permits. So all the legwork would actually be done by the applicant by the time that they are providing us with this information.
On a formal thing like this, does our fire department go over kind of on standby? So
I'm not sure if they're on standby, but there is a joint requirement between the fire and police with regard to a safety plan. I believe that fire is in place at the time that these shows are taking place, but I would have to confirm that. I'm not sure. Now, and I will state, there are certain things that if it is on state property, there's a state fire marshal as well that must approve some of these plans.
I agree with the mayor that we need to find out about ETSU. I live on that side of town, so I know it's active and it's loud, and we start getting calls, I didn't think fireworks were allowed in Johnson City, so.
There have been some gray areas that we'll provide a little more detail to ensure that everybody is properly complying with all the rules that are in place through the state and local
So this would
ordinances.
apply to the July 4th. Do we know if that's back on the agenda?
I don't think we know yet. Charlie's
Charlie,
given us a
thank
thumbs up. Thank you.
very good.
Charlie says,
I've been
just so
asked
we
that
can
numerous
capture it,
times,
that
right.
there's a meeting on whether the 4th of July fireworks is happening tomorrow.
In the event that there is
It'll
a,
probably happen on July 4th.
Yes, I knew, the minute I said that, it came out wrong. There's a meeting tomorrow to discuss having fireworks on July the 4th. Thank
At
you.
Freedom Hall, yeah.
At Freedom.
but in the event that there would be, the individuals that in the past have been engaged for that fireworks show have obtained the state licenses. So a city license the city permit would be issued at that time. Again, this is a permit, not a license.
And I guess just for clarification for people like me, the unfortunate part is it is only granted to licensed exhibitors, not residents. Right?
Correct. This does not impair any, this doesn't change any ordinance that we have in place. What this does is removes the handshake and creates an actual permit, as our ordinance has stated since 1985.
So no neighborhood fireworks. Is
Correct.
what you're saying.
Correct.
Thank you.
Unless you want to hire somebody who knows what they're doing.
Right.
All right, do we have any other questions on that one?
Just one more. Would this allow another group to come and apply for a permit?
It wouldn't prevent any, if there's an event organized, we'll say, on private property. If it's city property, there's going to be some other levels of control in there. But for an event on private property, as long as they meet the state's requirements with regard to their site plan, their safety plan, where those are set up, where they're detonated, and can obtain the proper safety protocols within local enforcement. And so they get that state certificate. The state says, yes, you can shoot these off in this location. They would not be prevented from getting a permit from the city. Like I said, we are essentially the second step that just bridges that gap to actually create a physical permit on behalf of the city. So they would go through the state requirements first, but if they obtain those, then yes, they would be able to.
And all we're doing is creating the actual process to get the permit. We've told people they should have for the last 35 years that we didn't have the permit codified. And the only reason we're voting on it is because $10, because it's a fee. There's
Correct.
a fee type. Okay.
Correct, because there is a fee associated with this.
Any other questions on that one? I guess that moves us to 722.
Yes, and I think Phil is here to talk about the contract for asphalt materials, for 3-year contract.
And you've got that PowerPoint we talked about?
Yeah.
This is a contract to provide asphalt for patching services for both public works and water sewer. I believe the maximum or threshold is around $1 million. We're fine with that. This gives us a little flexibility between the two companies in case one has a big project, can't provide the product, or one is closer to the actual project area, and it makes sense for us to just reduce our time and effort to obtain the products.
And this is just for patchwork, not for resurfacing? Or
Right,
is
the
it-
resurfacing is Summers Taylor.
Okay.
Patching, we're just buying the materials.
And then Public Works actually does the work, this is just the
Yes,
product?
Tom has a crew and I have a crew, yeah.
Okay, I just couldn't get that in the write-up, so I was just,
So-
thanks.
So we fund annually about $3 million a year for
3.3,
resurfacing.
yeah.
So this is $1 million of that 3.
No,
No.
Is this in addition to?
This is
Right.
patching holes they make in the
This,
street.
we have a
I'm just
separate,
talking about the budget for.
separate line items, or if we have a project and we need asphalt filler to complete the project, it's charged to the project, or the patching, or to making speed humps has a separate line item,
Yeah.
so on.
Okay, so it's not a part of our
Correct.
$3 million paving project, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions on that item? If not, that comes to the end of our questions for the consent agenda. Is there readiness to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to
Second.
approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Thank you, Commission. The next order of business is consideration of the ordinances. This is the first reading for ordinance 4803-22, an ordinance to rezone 109 Memory Garden Road from RO1 High Density Residential Professional Office District to B4 Planned Arterial District Business.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll take it, I'm going to do the best I can with this mouse. Okay, so the site that we have is right along the interstate of I-26, Memorial Garden. You'll see Boones Creek Road here. It has been RO1 for a while. What they would like to do is take this 5.5-acre site, and they're proposing a bank. And that is not necessarily an allowed use in RO1, which is why they're asking for the B4. So we're trying to process this as quickly as possible, where they have their building here, their parking in the front. This will be a very prominent building because it does rise in that area. You've probably also seen some grading work done. There's one little buffer that needs to be beside the cemetery that is right over here, the cemetery property. The future land use map calls for this area to be commercial, so this would be consistent with that. Just some pictures of the site and the development work that's going on there. And Staff recommends approval. Planning Commission recommends approval. There was a neighborhood meeting with, as kind of intended, or as expected. No one was in attendance, but, so.
Only because there aren't a lot of neighbors in
There
the
aren't a lot of
immediate
neighbors,
neighborhood.
and there's a cemetery next door.
Yeah, exactly. They don't come to public meetings. Okay.
So, do you have any questions?
Now, are there questions for staff?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second to approve. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Whitney. The next order of business is a second reading and public hearing. This is an ordinance to modify Article 4, application of regulations to allow accessory structures to be located in the architectural rear yard of double frontage lots.
It's me, all ordinances, just me today. So, we did read this one at first reading, but there are some things I would like to go back over for the public. Just the definition of a double frontage lot is one that is fronted by two public streets, not necessarily an alley. And then an accessory structure, the ones that we're talking about would be something that is a detached, like a garage or a shed, and those that are permanent. And one thing that we didn't talk about in first reading, but what we're really looking at are the ones that need to be permitted. That's the one we typically see when we have questions. So just some what of the things that we're going to change is about that architectural rear. And then this is really where I kind of want to spend more of the time, is to explain what we have versus what we're proposing. So where you could put an accessory structure currently where we have is in this yellow area. It can only really be in the side yard. So what we're proposing is to allow for the yellow and the blue. So to allow for something to kind of go there a little bit. And I think this is easier to see a little bit when you take it into the public. These were in the public hearing packet. And this is our original language.
Whitney, you
Yes.
described one of the two fronts as the backyard in the previous. Is there a criteria for determining?
The mouse is not my friend.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like where you have a double frontage, the slide a minute ago. One more back, identified it as the rear yard.
Architectural rear.
So you're evaluating the house to figure out, we think this is the front.
Well, typically there's a front door to a house. Like there is a main.
Agreed, but there's some pretty boring houses that the fronts and backs are kind of the same.
Yes, and it would be how the original, how we would look at that is how the permit would have been done, and like where maybe a sidewalk goes to the street or where their car is coming into. That
Your address?
address would also work if they've addressed one particular street.
I just was trying
Yeah.
to figure the criteria for establishing a rear yard. Thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a porch or a stoop. Most have a stoop.
So right now, they wouldn't be able to put it in what most would consider their backyard.
Correct. To kind of give real world examples, I'm starting here on one of the tree streets. So this is in the yellow would be where you could put, and there's the current ordinance, where you could, on these particular lots, where you could sit an accessory structure. The proposed ordinance would add this blue area. So some have a great area. So this area right here is part of that setback. You couldn't put it there. Just in this, inside this blue area. You'll notice this lot doesn't really have it doesn't have any extra room to get, it has what it has. This lot, this is actually a corner lot, so that doesn't, we have regulations for that. But this one, they only can kind of go here. I tried to take in that this is not to scale, and I tried to take in as best I could to side setbacks. So the same would be is they'll be able to add into this kind of backyard area. And this is one where you have two houses facing opposite streets. And so I think that's very important to kind of show how we've already developed in this way. So, and this one in particular has a storage building in the back already. So I don't know when that was permitted, if it was, like, you'd only have to get a permit if it exceeds 200 square feet. So a 10 by 20. So if you have a 10 by 10.
As far as the base.
As far as the, yes.
So like the sheds that are sitting out in front of Home Depot or Lowe's, you're not permitting those because they're basically just
Unless
getting
they're,
dropped.
yeah, unless they're 200 square feet or greater, we don't need a building permit for those, and that's what we're permitting.
Is that a city thing or is that a state thing?
That's a city thing. Or city thing is not a correct
So
word.
yard barns, pre-manufactured yard barns, people could put those on their
Up to
backyard.
200 square
Up to
feet.
200 square feet. So this shows where you've got two houses that face Hollywood Lane and then two houses that face Vine Lane and Faith Circle. You're gonna,
I don't want to interrupt, I just want to clarify that it doesn't require a permit, it still has to meet setbacks.
still has to meet setbacks, but as far as where we go out and look, it would be a complaint-driven kind of thing. We make them move it. So this would say, okay, this would be some area that you could add to. Now, there was some discussion between first hearing and second reading about maybe some additional provisions for adding some softening. So these are some provisions to consider instead of just what's in your packet, up to maybe to add some vegetated buffer in the rear yard if there is no vegetated buffer. For instance, if you drive down Cedar Place, there is some natural vegetation that has occurred behind some of the houses where if they did want to add something, it may not be seen from Cedar Place. And the topography changes that just a little bit. So that could be some additional language that you guys could consider to add some buffering requirements. And then this is one that staff does recommend approval for and Planning Commission has recommended approval for. It is a public hearing and there, I have spoken with some public that have come in to talk to me about it. So I know that they're here.
Are there questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
I have some comments, but we can go ahead and do the public hearing first.
So I will open a public hearing on Ordinance 4800-22 and invite anyone wishing to speak for or against to the podium. If you'll approach the podium and give your name and address and then remarks you wish to make.
My name is George Rubishaw. I live at 605 North Hills Drive, Johnson City. I also own a vacant lot at 603 Willowwood Drive, which is directly behind my home address. The way the zoning code currently reads, I have basically no option for an accessory structure of any type on my vacant lot. The proposed text amendment to the dual frontage lot would allow myself and other residents of Johnson City to at least apply for a permit for an accessory structure. So I'm definitely in support of approval and adding it to the Johnson City zoning code.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? If not, we'll close the public hearing and turn to the commission for deliberation or questions.
I did have, I think at our last meeting, some real concerns about, how close to the back of the line. I know there are setbacks. But once you put an accessory structure on the back of their second front yard, it really is the front yard of the people across the street. So they're going to be looking into another little shed or building there. So Preston and I talked yesterday a little bit, and so that's where maybe requiring some buffering behind this building might add at least some protection for the other neighbors. So I would really like to see us add that in there. I think the other thing we talked about as well is how far back on the lot would be appropriate when you've got a neighbor next door who that's their front, and the people across the street, that's their front. But now you've got a shed right on 20 feet or 25 feet from the curb. Is that right?
It depends on the front setback, and most of our front setbacks are in that 20 to 30 range. which it also mirrors the rear setback usually. It's usually 20, there are some that are greater for the rear. Most of these, from my research, most of these lots are the more shallow lots. There are some that are rather large. I think the one from Hollywood Lane, some of that stems from either coming into it from a county, I think, development code or a 1960s development code. But some of our older issues are the smaller lots. So you don't have as much room with the lot size. For instance, in the tree streets along out near Country Club, there's several there, and hills around like the hillside area. There's one or two over there.
The buffering wouldn't apply to already installed units.
We could not retroactive this. So, for instance, the one where the two like on the Hollywood, we could not retroactive it.
What kind of, or is there any, what are the ramifications of, say, nighttime gardening? You know, they plant the buffers and then, you know, a week or two later, they've been transplanted to a dumpster or whatever.
That a lot of is enforcement. So if they have neighbors that notice it, they can call and make a formal complaint, and we can have them put it right back up.
Okay.
For
When you
anyone
say
has a
the
permit.
Hillside area, where are you?
I'm trying to think of where that is. I might have the wrong
Was it the
hillside.
one, was it one of these?
No, it's in a different. I have aerial viewed this city in a way that I never knew I could. But there's and it's, I may have the wrong street, and I say hillside, and it's something else that's a hill. It might be Hillcrest, Mayflower, Mayfield. I get those confused too. But there's.
What's around it?
I'm like, I want to go pull up my old file.
But you're talking about longer lots. I mean, the 8th to 9th.
That
That would be an example.
That's an example of a longer lot. I would imagine that at one point in time in development, that one had an alley of some nature that may have gotten incorporated into the lot, or how
Yeah, because the alley stops about halfway through that block.
Mhm.
And the house bought the lot behind them, so they wouldn't have anybody build.
There's
So-
a lot of interesting ways that lots get created throughout history.
So my concern is the next door neighbor who's facing that street, and this neighbor's facing this street, and they're gonna put an accessory building right back here, and this neighbor's sitting on their porch, and that's what they're looking into now. Plus the ones who are across the street. who are looking into
Maybe
it.
let's go back.
Well, I can speak to that. I live across the street from a double frontage yard, a lot. I mean, the house directly across from me could do exactly what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Can I see the text amendment or the
In fact,
the shrubbery stuff?
So if this is something where you still would like staff to work on the language, we could keep the public hearing open, or we can continue to work on the language as we move to the third reading.
I guess the question that may help us from a staff perspective is the language, the way that it's written, does it cover being able to provide that buffer to the house across the street?
Well, I guess my question to answer that question is, the way I'm reading it is the buffer would be facing the street. It wouldn't necessarily, so if your house is facing this way, you're still looking at the structure because the buffering's on
Across
the
the
other side.
street, yes. It would soften it some, so that you were looking at vegetative, that you were looking at landscaping, a little bit more landscaping than you would be otherwise because it would be between, so if this is the accessory building and this is the street, it would be here.
Right. And there's a cap, we limit accessory structures to not more than 1,000 square.
It is, I'm going to get myself in trouble. It is 700 square feet or half of the gross first floor area,
So if you had a
whichever
really
is
big
greater.
house,
Yes,
you could have a much bigger accessory structure.
but that's total accessory structures.
So the pool house and the.
Right, so yeah, you could have one big
separate
one
guests.
or
Yeah, okay.
little ones.
And it is limited by height too, is it, Preston? Can't be two-story. I mean, they have some out at Home Depot that are 2 stories, you know. Can't put those on there. You can?
Depends on the principal structure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I would feel much more comfortable if we could do the buffer, and then I would even be more comfortable if on these particular things, the setbacks larger. So they don't push everything right on the back of their lot, 20 feet from the curb, and the neighbor's the one that gets to enjoy that.
Would something closer to the rear setback be more acceptable of the zoning district? So for instance. Okay, this is. So in this case, would 30 feet, because that is what the rear setback would be for a principal structure.
What's the so you've got blue drawn on those 2 to the right. What's the setback where the blue starts? Is that 20 feet?
That's about 20 feet.
Okay. So 30 feet would be just 50% more.
Just about, yeah, a little bit this way.
So it'd still be in the front yard, it'd be in front of the line of the 2 houses on the left.
Because these were built at a time where there are 2, but their setback was not 20. I mean, it's a setback, not a build 2. So they set their house farther back than a build 2 or than the 20 feet.
The petitioner who's here, they want to put an accessory structure just on a vacant lot?
They have an issue of a different sort. They can combine their lots to create a double frontage lot, to basically have a accessory structure. The only way for them to have an accessory structure of what they're looking for is to combine their lots in some way, shape, or form. They're probably got 2 options. But one of them is to combine them into a double frontage lot, access through the Willowwood Drive, and have it towards the back of their lot closer to their house. So that's what they're looking to do. And this is usually how we get issues. I put a picture of Monty's office because he gets a lot of the issues, and when we try to solve problems, it's usually Monty saying something like, "We got a problem to solve."
Yeah, this is a tough one.
And I think from a staff perspective, given the feedback that we've gotten, we're good to continue the public hearing if procedurally that is the right thing, so that we can take this into consideration before closing it and having the second reading complete.
Extend it to the 3rd reading then?
Yeah.
So is there, I guess I had already closed public hearing, but I guess.
And I don't know, Janet, if you can
rescind
help
my
us with that.
closing of-
Do we have to have the public hearing still open, or can we go ahead and close it?
We might want to check with Sunny, but I would think we could advertise again for public hearing on 3rd reading.
Okay.
You don't need to re-advertise. If you just reopen it here tonight, you can carry it.
I just don't know about Robert's rules on reopening after you've closed.
Can we suspend Robert's rules? And
Sunny may want to come up, and I don't know if she heard the question that we'll need to ask her. The public hearing for this has been closed, so the question is,
Can I reopen it?
she's checking her law book.
can we reopen it,
the
or
same
should
meeting.
we just re-advertise it and open it again for the 3rd reading?
Google
Remember,
it.
3rd reading is 3 weeks away too, so if you're trying to time the advertising, you've got an extra week.
Let me ask another question. If the petitioner did not apply to have their lots joined, so that you had a double frontage, would they be able to put a accessory structure on a lot that's vacant?
No, because it has to be accessory to something.
So that's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is in a residential neighborhood?
It is.
Oh, North Hill.
Or this particular.
I got a question regarding the buffer, the vegetation buffer. Are there more specifics we can add to that I would like to know what exactly are you envisioning as a vegetation buffer? I want to know what that looks like. Because it may be something different than I'm thinking.
I have purposely left it a little vague and a little up to interpretation, but we do have, when it comes, because it depends on how ultimately you guys would like to vote on this. But right now, it's just that it needs to be evergreen, so that
It's always.
so that it's always a year round. It doesn't have to be a specific depth. Obviously, it would not, if there was a garage there, it would not be where the driveway is, but, and it doesn't have to, we're just saying in between the accessory structure and the street, not necessarily into the lot.
And we do define different vegetative buffers in our code, like, so 6-foot trees on 6-foot centers.
Yes, we
and all
have
that,
like,
which is
we
obviously-
we can use that if if that's something that you would rather see.
Yeah, I think that just gets
That's-
at your question. You
Yeah.
just want to know, what are we talking about?
Yeah, and that's where I was trying to get to. I would like to see some more specifics if
Okay.
we could adopt something.
And some of it is because it was these are existing single-family lots, and there are usually limits. We don't want to put too much limit too much on a property owner, but I can look into maybe like a
Then
type
there's
1.
not that much buffer. I mean, if most of these are going to be under 700 square feet, there's not that much buffering.
It depends if you want it to be, let's use this as an example of whether you want it to be just right here throughout the whole lot. How that, like, do they buffer just in front of the building? Do they buffer the entire backyard?
Yeah, I think you're just buffering the
Just the building. Okay.
I don't know. That's just my
Say the
opinion.
building, but yeah, we do need specifics.
Sonny, the question is, can we reopen the public hearing?
You can leave public hearing open.
But I'd already closed it. Okay. I'm very stealthy that way. It was just almost, yeah.
You can reopen public hearing. You will make that noted here in a meeting, and then on third reading, it will just say public hearing.
Continue.
Third hearing.
Okay, so for the, purposes of procedure, we will reopen public hearing so that we can keep public hearing open until third reading, currently scheduled for our meeting on March the 24th, which is a week later than normal. So public hearing remains open. Now there's a question of action on this item at second reading. What say you?
I'll be honest, not that I'm not honest, but I just don't feel comfortable making a motion as is to move it to third reading. That's just where I am. So, I think we have more work to do. However, if we move it to third reading, we give it another opportunity to be presented again. Correct?
Yeah.
Well, if you made a motion to approve it on second reading, we still have the meeting on the 24th. Public hearing would remain open. What you would be losing is another opportunity to revisit it. It's going to be up or down. I mean, you could table it, I guess, on third reading and push it into the April meeting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've got concerns, but we've talked through it tonight, I think there are certain situations where it actually would be a benefit compared to the current regulation, but I also see a lot of areas where it would be not necessarily that beneficial. But I mean, I'm willing to make a motion to approve on second reading.
Would a motion to defer to keep this one open be an option?
I'm seeing from Sunny that it would be, so if you wanted
To
to.
keep it on second reading.
To keep it on second reading.
And then take it up at the 24th as second reading, and so folks could get more comfortable, and then bring it back to the following meeting for the
Yep.
third reading.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to defer.
So it's a motion to approve on second?
Defer.
Defer, I'm sorry.
Defer.
A motion to defer. Is there a second on the motion to
Second.
defer? Okay, there's a motion and a second to defer second reading until March 24th.
Thank
If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes. To Mr. Rubishaw, we will continue on this path. It's just, the fear is not so much your particular instance, but it's all the other ways it could manifest itself across the city. So we appreciate your endurance.
Thank you. The next, your next order of business is second reading to request, a request to assign zoning of RP2 to an approximately 2.33 acre territory located at 1493 Becky Drive.
This one is no public hearing. Where we are in this is the penultimate of a annexation decision. So we are here in this zoning assignment. The public hearing will be at the next meeting when the final resolution is done or is taken up. And what the request is to rezone approximately a little over 2 acres that is attached, this is all one piece, well, not anymore, it's 2 pieces now, but it's attached to Becky Drive. And this is the portion that's in the city, and they would like to put their house here. And so therefore, they would like to annex into the city. And so with the zoning classification that they are requesting is RP2, which is what is across the street and what is along Becky Drive.
And there's no changes.
I have no changes.
Would you like to open
So if are there questions of staff, given no changes?
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion
it?
and a
Wait.
second.
Is this second reading?
Yes, but there's no public.
Oh, I
hearing.
see that now.
So
I just saw the
we have
public
a,
hearing part.
it's the penultimate
Sorry.
Penultimate.
thing that she said.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Now we move to the information sharing, and I think there were some questions about information.
No, I got mine taken care of.
Okay, thank you. I thought I saw an email earlier about the item number 13.2, but you said you got that taken care of. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? We'll turn to the commission for any reports you might wish to make, boards and commissions or other items of interest. I'll start with Commissioner Hunter, just because I did that earlier, kind of keep the
No.
pattern.
I don't believe so.
Okay, Commissioner Brock?
Just that it's warm today, and it's great.
It is. It is. Commissioner Murphy?
Yes, sir. We had the privilege to see and interact with the World Series trophy from the Atlanta Braves. That was a wonderful experience. I was able to share that with Commissioner Brock and Commissioner Hunter and Charlie and JT and other city staff, and so we appreciated that.
Send me the picture, I'll autograph it. We got a good picture of us. Yeah. There was quite a crowd out in the parking lot. I couldn't believe it as we kind of went outside, and it was wrapped around, and the little kids who were there, it was just great, all the little baseball players. And so it's a big day for them.
Yeah. Go Braves.
That's right.
All right. If there's nothing further, this meeting will stand adjourned.
Thank you.